50 minutes with you to talk about what the evaluation process is. And I know some of you have done evaluating already, but just hopefully we can get a little bit of information out to you to kind of help you through the process. It's only 6, 7 of us. It's very casual, so if you want to ask any questions, if you want to just even comment on anything I'm sharing, anything that I'm going to speak tonight is not necessarily written in stone or in blood, so let's talk about it and see how we go. So the first thing I always ask people is, what actually is an evaluation? And a lot of people feel that an evaluation is strictly a test. What do you think the difference between an evaluation and a test is?
Well, test, there's the right and the wrong, right? It's kind of black and white. Evaluation
Right.
is you can pull things and ask in a different way. You can, right, see how you can resonate with that one person. You might need different examples, or right. There's more entry to that gray area where you can
Right.
find clarification.
So that's exactly the answer. A test always is black and white. It's either wrong or it's right. An evaluation, and as an evaluator, you're allowed to look at things objectively. So that's really important when we're looking at somebody's teaching skills and their abilities. There is a little bit of gray area we're going to talk about that. The key on an evaluation process is it needs to be unbiased. We're going to get a little deeper into that in a few minutes, but that's probably, I find, my experience working with other people, is that's the hardest thing to not do, is to be biased when you walk into an evaluation. So what makes a good evaluator? The first thing is, ultimately, our jobs as evaluators is to see whether or not a new or a renewing leader is meeting the provincial and the national standards. Okay, now there is some, again, like we just say, there's a little bit of variation on some of what fits into that standards, but your job is unbiased. Does that leader meet the standards? That's the bottom line question. Because standards are set there, obviously to protect people's safety, but I also feel quite strongly that standards are there to elevate the level of our profession. We're still fighting to be recognized as part of the health industry. And so when we have strong standards and make our members adhere to those standards, I think we elevate our position in the health industry. Because I think we're equally as important as going to the doctor, is getting people moving. We need to have strong communication skills. I know that sounds like a simple statement to make. Think back to, I always kind of laugh at this, but think back to, let's say, a teacher you had in school. Just because you know, or they know the skill, and I always think back to a math teacher. The guy was a brilliant mathematician, but he actually couldn't teach. He couldn't share that knowledge in a way that was received easily by the students. So when we talk about communication skills for an evaluator, you might be brilliant at understanding the standards and knowing how choreography works and knowing how proper ways to do a lunge or not do a lunge, but if you don't have the ability to communicate that in an effective way, then you're not going to be effective as an evaluator. So a lot of that comes with experience, and a lot of it just comes from understanding what language most people are going to feel comfortable with, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. Here's the key thing too, like a test, is we have to be comfortable that we're not looking for perfection. What do you think the primary job of an evaluator is to look for in a leader? What's the most important thing we're looking for when we're evaluating someone?
Areas to improve.
Pardon me?
Areas to improve.
What I think is key, if I'm looking for someone that's a good instructor, is the technical part can all come and you can learn that, but it's finding that person that has great, can communicate, can engage the crowd, can make a fun class, because those people will want to go to that person's class.
Okay.
They don't care if they have knowledge up to here, if they're not fun and
I agree with you from a participant standpoint.
okay.
As an evaluator though, what's even more important than the instructor being fun?
They're not putting their clients at risk.
Safety. I don't care what you're wearing at first, I don't care what your music is sounding like, even to a certain extent how fun you are. We want to make sure that what they're presenting is safe and it's not compromising the participants in their class. I can remember, I'm originally from Alberta, and that's where I originally got certified. I can remember one of the instructors I worked with, she was so much fun and she would always have these crazy costumes, and her classes legitimately were packed. But she used to scare the rest of us, the stuff that she would do in class. And we all used to kind of, not complain, but we kind of say to the gym manager, you know, you should maybe go watch her class. So it's great if people have that charisma to draw people in. But as an evaluator for MFC and getting people to meet national and provincial standards, the first thing is we cannot compromise their safety. So even if somebody misses a step or they mess up their cueing, I'm actually fairly comfortable with being lenient on those things. I am not lenient on safety at all. So safety is your primary job as an evaluator, is making sure that they're keeping their participants in the safest possible position and we're not compromising people. We have to trust our judgment as it relates to the standards. Do you understand what that means? What do you think that means?
I think that it's being able to ask the question if you have a question and seeing if their answers, that you can hone them into that standard, that they understand the concept of it. You know, they might not be able to communicate it, or maybe they give a poor demonstration during their class. But if you feel with like a discussion that they understand that concept, then you can go, okay, this is a polishing note.
Right.
So, you know, it didn't quite come across in the class, you know, maybe consider other options of whatever.
Right, and so this comes back to our concept of not everything within an evaluation is a pass or a fail. It's our judgment about whether or not what they're doing is really meeting that standard. We have to be also willing to ask for help. Now, there's been a couple times where people have done some stuff in class and it's not really unsafe, but I wasn't convinced that it was appropriate for the audience. And so there's been a few times, not a lot admittedly, but there's been a few times where I've either talked to Stephanie or I've talked to Fairleigh. I don't know how many of you know Fairleigh, but I've known Fairleigh for years, so I've contacted Fairleigh and said, okay, this instructor did this. This is who the audience was, the participation was. What do you think about this? So as an evaluator, there's, how many evaluators do we have now, Stephanie?
I think we have 30 some odd.
Okay, so you have 30 peers that you can connect with if you feel you've witnessed something that you're just not sure about. And you have to be honest. Here's the thing I struggled with when I first started evaluating is I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I kind of was, you know, sugar-coating and gravy-coating things a little bit. Our job as evaluators are not to be their friend. That's not our job. Our job is to, again, see whether or not they're meeting standards. And sometimes it's hard to be honest with someone when you know they've put a ton of work into their class still is not very strong. So being a good evaluator means you're removing yourself emotionally and looking at things objectively and honestly. And sometimes, I know for me, that's hard to do because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. Okay, so what is a fitness leader evaluation? The first thing it is to determine, and we've talked about this lots already, is whether or not they're meeting the standards. And the standards are always connected directly to safety. The next is form an expert opinion or impression about what you've seen. Because there's a little bit of gray around some of what we do, we're looking to leaders who have got lots and lots of experience in the areas that they're evaluating. And we're trusting your judgment to look at these things and determine whether or not in that setting they're meeting the standards. and we have to judge it in our own words. So one of the things that I met someone who had like standard lines. So here's the, because when we first started evaluating here, it literally was a checklist with points. 1 point, 2 point, I think went up to 5 points. And then your whole thing was based on how many points you collected, and you had to put little check marks and stuff like that. And she had actually standard comments that she put on the evaluation of every single person. So she is making a judgment in her own words, but it's not a personal attachment, or not personal, but a professional attachment to what was witnessed. So don't be afraid to put your own personality and your own experience and expertise into how you're judging a class. Big no-nos. Don't change the standard based on someone's experience. So let's say you're evaluating a brand new leader, and then a week later you're going to reevaluate someone who's been teaching for 3 years. What happens quite often is people tend to be a little bit more lenient with new leaders and stricter with existing leaders, because we expect, if you've been teaching for 3 years, you should know what to do. But, oh, you're new, so we're going to let it slide. So there can be no variance in your expectation of standards based on the length of time someone has been teaching. And be aware of that, because most of the time, they tend to be lighter on new leaders and harsher on renewing leaders. We also can't, quite often, you might be in a situation, and it doesn't happen as much now because we don't get recertified as much as we used to, because we used to have to get recertified every 3 years. Now we get certified, and then we have an evaluation 3 years later. But let's say you happen to do this new leader, and 3 years later, because they work in the same facility as you, they want you to reevaluate you for their 3-year recertification. Try and look at each evaluation on its own merit. So don't think back, gee, you know, I can remember 3 years ago telling this person that their heels hung off the step when they taught a step class. And 3 years later, they're still teaching with their heels hanging off the step. So we're going to lose marks based on that because of our experience of knowing where they came from before. Or the opposite. I can remember I told this person not to do a shoulder press in this manner. Look at how great they're doing a shoulder press now, so I'm going to give them a higher mark because I know they've improved. We cannot compare previous evaluations to the current evaluation you're doing. It doesn't matter whether they've improved or not from what you've seen before. The pass or fail is based on what you're witnessing during that evaluation. What about the last one, compared to peers? We all know, I think, we're all a little bit guilty of the idea of I go to someone's class and I love their class and think they're spectacular, and then maybe a sub comes in and does something different. We think, really, they're not as good as so-and-so. So during an evaluation, we can't do that because we can't say, I evaluated somebody doing a BOSU class last week that was spectacular. This person, well, their BOSU isn't as strong, and because you know how great this class and this leader was, this person potentially would get a lower mark based on a comparison of what somebody else has done. All of these are about isolating the evaluation you're doing. Here's a big one. Don't make an assumption about what you believe the leader was thinking when they made a choice of their choreography or their muscle strength and conditioning component to their class. Can you see it?
No, it doesn't say it.
He says, it's precisely 10 meters from the fence line, and where he's putting in a water well, so he's making an assumption, and this guy over here is basically putting in an outhouse. It's a mess. So if you're not sure, or you've seen something that's maybe a little bit unusual, simply ask. Don't make an assumption on. Here's a goofy thing that I say to people all the time is sell it to me. So if you've done something, let's say weird in class, before I make a decision whether that's a good choice or not a good choice, I'll say to them, sell it to me. So why did you do that? What was the process behind it? What did you think? How did you think it was going to help the participants? So maybe they say, oh, I saw it on Pinterest this morning. Thought I'd try it out. Or they may say, gee, I just came back from a fitness conference and the presenter was talking about how this changes knee alignment or whatever. So if you're not sure about what you see, don't make an assumption on how they came to be or came to do that movement. Just ask them. All right. Wanting a certain income brings you into an evaluation already biased. You will, on lots of occasions, probably evaluate someone you know. Maybe a friend, maybe someone you work with, someone you met at a conference. Lots of times we are in situations we're going to evaluate friends or peers or coworkers. Okay, so that sometimes can put us in a little bit of an uncomfortable position. So wanting them to pass, so walking in saying, oh, you know, I've worked with Maria lots of times. Now I'm getting asked to evaluate her, I like her, we get along. So because I'm already in my mind talking about how much I like this person, I'm walking into that evaluation with a bias because I want that person to succeed. So I'm going to look for the qualities that are going to contribute to my decision. You have a puzzled look on your face, so.
No, I slightly disagree with you to a certain extent because every person, so I just first CSEP, right? Every person, I want them to pass, but I have no, and probably my failure rate is probably higher because I'm like, their standards, like, if you cannot do a manual heart rate, it doesn't matter, like, well, you're only 10 beats off, you know? Like, there's very black and white for me there, and I mean, there's a little gray area, right, where you can have that communication, but all in all, like, every person I test, like, I generally want them to pass.
Oh, no, and I agree. I want people to be successful too. But when you read about evaluation processes, they say that you have to be very careful about how much you, as the evaluator, desire the outcome to be.
Like, are you talking about, like, the relationship? So, like, Christina, I know you, I really want you to pass.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if because Maria and I know
so I wasn't,
each
like,
other.
differential. I'm like,
right.
hey, like, I generally want people to pass. I don't want to have to deal with people all the time.
Don't we? Even when you go to class as a participant, you walk in and say, gee, I hope that instructor's going to be great and I'm going to have a good time in this.
Yeah, okay, that's why I was puzzled. I was like, hey, I'm not quite sure I agree with you on that
when
sense.
you do the research on evaluation process, they say if there's anything that you're hoping the outcome to be, it creates a bias for you. And that your view of whoever or whatever you're evaluating changes when you have a strong opinion about how you want the outcome to be. Okay? Have you guys ever heard of the halo effect? It's basically what we're talking about here is the halo effect is that because I know you, I'm not going to look for anything bad. I have a preconceived notion of what I want your class to be and how successful I want you to be. And it's a bit of a challenge, especially in Manitoba, because we're such a small province and we've got a smaller membership and we know each other. That creates a bias as well. And it's really hard not to go into an evaluation without a bias. Because we're human. We want good things to happen for people. Here's a great line that many, many years ago, someone wise once said to me. We had this great discussion about something. Different isn't wrong, it's just different. Because someone is doing something different in a class than you would ever do, doesn't make it wrong. Is it safe and does it meet the standards? And if I see something super different, I say, sell it to me. Tell me why you made that decision. Tell me why you did something so weird in your class that I've never seen before. Doesn't mean that it's wrong, it's just different. Some things are not observable or measurable or even quantitative. What do you think are some things that are not specifically measurable? You kind of said it a few minutes ago. Remember what you said?
Well, I was just saying that those characteristics are so important in an instructor. They might not have anything to do with the standards or safety.
Yeah.
But I don't want instructors working for me that are super safe and unmotivated and unfun, because no one's going to go to the fitness.
Right, but we don't want somebody super fun who's dangerous.
No,
So there's obviously a balance.
I agree, yeah.
But how do you quantify fun? How do you quantify charisma? Do you put it on a scale of 1 to 10? So there are some things that you're going to evaluate or that will be in the evaluation that are not.
So is that in the evaluation? Do you look at that at
No,
all?
no. But I 100% agree with you. We want people who are fun, energetic, that are going to draw people in, especially if we're in a club. Like, that's what we want. We want people to come to our class. Now, safety has to come first. And one of the things that they talk about in the evaluation is sort of the communication skills and the rapport. So does the instructor, introduce themselves at the beginning? Do they acknowledge somebody new? Do they use music well? All of those things, I think, come when an instructor is energetic and fun and charismatic and caring. So those types of things we're not quantifying them by putting them, 1 to 5 or whatever. But they can impede or promote the standards based on how the standards are delivered.
It can also be, though, that they're not comfortable. So when I do lots of times evaluations, people are not that fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because
well,
they're
especially
so
first time.
nervous.
New.
They're nervous.
Because they're like this.
It was like when you can
Step, touch,
she's not like
grapevine. They're just like stiff and they're just, I agree.
They're not comfortable.
They're not
Yes.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Renewing, for sure. So how those unmeasurable things can relate to how the standards are met. Because the standards, there's a section in the standards that talk about communication skills, and having fun and motivating people is a communication skill.
So when somebody's really nervous like that, like I can use, because I sat to do my practical evaluator with Stephanie, their nerves get on them so much that they miss things that they probably know, or I knew she knew, but she missed it because she was just really nervous.
Yeah.
So is that when you go back through your notes and say,
Well, we're going to talk about
right?
notes. We're going to talk about notes.
Sell
in a
this to
minute.
me, like this kind of happened, right?
But on one of these slides talks about that if you see something or you don't see something, you can sit, because you're going to sit down with them after class anyways, and you could perhaps give them a scenario.
Yeah.
So,
Or opportunity, like I noticed you did this during your class, can you explain to me? And they might not even notice that they had done it,
right,
just purely out of nerves, right?
right. I hope even with nerves, I hope they know or recognize at least that they did it.
Mm-hmm.
What I have found for new evaluations is that not so much people do something wrong, but they forget to do something right. That they're missing something rather than doing something way out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So a lot of, when I have to reevaluate or evaluate people, where I work at the Wellness Institute, and you would be the same at the refit, because you're a medical fitness facility. So if I'm evaluating somebody who's going to be working for me or does work for me, as part of the standard, and if I feel I'm missing something, I'm going to put them in a specific scenario that's related to medical fitness. So maybe I noticed something unusual with a lunge, and I get them to sell it to me. And so I say, okay, what if you have, a man who's 62 years old who's had a knee replacement? Because part of the standards is understanding how you modify an exercise, right? Like you can't just be able to do a plain squat, because forget medical fitness. most of us have people coming to our classes that have some sort of skeletal issue. So part of meeting the standards is understanding modification. So let's say you're watching them and they're doing something, 95% of the class is following them. They have 4 participants that are simply not capable of doing what the leader is doing, but you're not seeing any modifications from that leader. And so these 4 participants are getting lost. So in your post conversation with them, you can put them in that scenario. You can put them back in that scenario. Here's the scenario. You had 4 people back here not capable of that. You didn't offer a modification. Please show me 2 modifications. Then, if in that time that you're sitting and talking with them, they can't offer you 2 modifications, then that component is a fail.
Yeah.
Because part of teaching is, and we all know, we all teach, is being receptive to what's going on in your class. It's not just standing up there like you're on a stage performing.
I've seen
Oh, I've totally seen that. Totally seen that. Okay? Your opinion counts. That's why you're being hired by the MFC, because they value your experience. So don't be afraid to share your thoughts with people. But make sure that your thoughts are based on the standard and the professional, that at no time it's a personal attack or an opinion on their personality. Okay? Here's something that Stephanie and I talk a lot about. A lot of people take the MFC courses. Not everybody takes the exam, but even those who then take the exam, the amount of people who pass the exam and even end up doing some practicum never get evaluated. And a lot of the feedback that Stephanie and Tina get is because people are too afraid of the evaluation.
I thought the bigger issue was being able to find someone that could help them get through their practice.
Well, I think mentoring is a big challenge.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure, like at MoreFit, do you take on practicum students?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Do you do it at the refit?
Oh God, I have
Yeah.
done it
A gazillion times.
a
Okay.
zillion times.
So-
But in my opinion, that is so key.
Yeah.
It's so key. If you have
Yeah.
someone good that's helping you,
Yeah.
it can make or break the instructor.
You can
for sure.
totally make or break it.
Yeah.
And so, where do you teach?
I work at the Spinch. Well, I have my own business. I teach from home.
Okay.
Up in the country.
Okay. But have you ever been approached about doing practicum for
I
anyone?
did do practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually think that part of, and I know not everybody agrees with me, but I believe that an evaluator can be a mentor. But if you've mentored somebody, so if I have mentored somebody in my class, I don't really feel that I'm an unbiased, objective then evaluator of that person. So an evaluator can be a mentor, but a mentor should not be an evaluator. Now, there have been situations simply because we have to get the evaluation done, that does happen, but that's not the best scenario to happen because we go into it with a bias. So let's say, for example, I've been working with someone to do the practicum, and I know they're really, really good, but then, now they know they're evaluated, they're really nervous, and they've screwed up, and they've done several dangerous things. So do I base my evaluation on what I just saw, or base my evaluation on what I've seen during their practicum?
That would be tough.
It's very tough. I've said this a couple
they
times.
know, but
You're, as an evaluator, you're evaluating that
instance.
that instant.
Because you're going to be just as nervous the first time you do a class on your own, similar to when you do the exam. So those
Right on.
same dangerous things that happen are probably going to happen in that first
Great.
couple, maybe.
So it's just like I said, you can't compare them to their peers, you can't compare them to whether they've improved or not improved, and you can't compare them that if you've been in a situation where you've done any mentoring with them. You are evaluating that class at that moment. And that's really hard to do. And the key is we have to be objective. That's what we do as evaluators. Okay? And I agree so much with you. And if you get a chance in whatever organization, even if you have your own business, is take on practicum students. Become a mentor. Help people. We do it all the time. I don't know what your requirements are. I need proof that they passed the exam, so I need the letter from the MFC saying they passed their exam, and I need them to have first aid and CPR before they even put their toe in the door. They must attend at least 2 classes before they even do anything. Because I don't know about you at the refit. I would think it would be fairly similar. I get calls every week. So tons of people that I don't even know are coming to us asking for a mentor. So I want them to at least have a basic understanding of what the class is. And then you can start, doing little pieces of it. So this is a big deal. So mentoring is really important. So as an evaluator, even if we're not directly mentoring someone and someone's directly doing our practicum, I think a big part of how we make people successful is being available to people to help them control some of the fear that they have about the evaluation.
Now, some of this is also based on the fact that sometimes there are people who just can't be up in front of people. Like, they take our certification and they think that they're going to be able to do it, and then when they really get to teaching classes, they go, oh, I'm just not that person. So it's not completely because they're afraid of the evaluators.
Yeah,
I didn't mean evaluate, but just getting up in front and being judged.
Right. Yeah.
Because every single time we teach a class, we're being evaluated, aren't we? Our participants are evaluating us 100%.
I get comment cards all the time, don't you, about the classes?
All the time.
So do I. Non-stop.
Non-stop. And sometimes comment cards are, I hated the shirt she was wearing. It was distracting. I had a comment card once. True, I won't say the instructor's name. The cover-up that so-and-so was wearing did not hide her pimples, and pimples are not healthy. Why is she an instructor? That's on my mother's grave. That's one of the comment cards about. Wow. So every time we teach, we are being evaluated. So I didn't mean that people were fearful of us as evaluators, but the minute you we are a very performance, in a way, we are a performance-based industry. It is showtime.
Showtime.
They're going to look at what your hair looks like, what your outfit is, what your music is like. So for a lot of people,
I say it every day.
so that the process of being judged scares a lot of people off. Okay, so how do we make it less stressful? I think people need to understand what you're going to do. I always meet with the leader before the class starts and tell them, here's what your role is, here's what my role is, here's the expectations. Be prepared to talk about it, okay? So that they know what's up and coming. This is a big one, and you said notes, and this is something that I've changed over the process. It's don't write during the evaluation. This is just these are my thoughts.
Would you forget those sometimes? Well, not too much. You might have to jot something down, no?
I jot.
I have to
So,
jot. I have to jot
I know,
something.
but again, this is something probably about 7-8 years ago. I read a paper about evaluations, and they just had all these experts that talked about, you're a professional, you have years of expertise. Why do you need to write things down that are critical? So why do you need to write down that? And I've seen this. How many of you have seen this? People with dumbbells doing this, calling it a lat pull down. I've seen that several times over the years. I don't need to write that down on a piece of paper. It stands out. If something stands out significantly enough that you need to talk to that leader about, you shouldn't, or the theory is you shouldn't have to write it down. I used to be like a maniac, I'll be honest. I would write 9 pages, and it would be everything good, anything good. It was just like, okay, she did a step, like that. And then over the years, the notes got smaller and smaller and smaller. And about 8 years ago, I put the notes away. And what I have found for me is that I'm watching more. Because even for a split, what if I just write down 8 or 9 words that take 20 seconds? What could I potentially miss in 20 seconds? You can actually potentially miss quite a bit. So I'm not telling you that you can't write notes. I'm saying to you, really, you will be a stronger, more attentive evaluator if you don't have your face on a clipboard with a pen. Now, as soon as the music is off, then I step away while they're, closing up their class, and then I write. But I no longer write in an evaluation. And I found for me, I feel like I'm a better evaluator now, because I'm not constantly doing this.
Our evaluation papers used to be books, though.
Oh, they were brutal.
Yeah, there was about 7, well, you
Yeah.
still have some of them in your packages, but they were like 7 or 8 pages and like big blocks, and people would feel the need to fill them in with text, right? So they would write and write. And
Because
write,
before you
write.
came, though, Stephanie, that was our, almost like our mandate,
Right.
was to fill, write with big giant blocks, and lines, and check marks, and
But
numbers,
it would just
and
go
it was
in
just
the filing
this.
cabinet, so it was just.
It was crazy, but Stephanie has condensed it. But even now, for me, I don't write during an evaluation anymore. As soon as it's done, it's right there, because we are smart, intelligent, experienced people. You're going to remember if you see something fantastic. You're going to remember if you see something that scares you. Just my thoughts.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, we already talked about this, but if you didn't see something, because sometimes, for example, a couple times I've evaluated 30-minute classes. It's pretty hard to get every single little thing in that you potentially need to see in 30 minutes. So you didn't see it, throw a scenario at them. Pass or fail. The ultimate question is, do they meet the standards, yes or no? But even if somebody fails, know that you don't know what I have never failed everybody on the entire class. It might be enough that I don't feel it's safe, but one of the things that we can help people to choose to get reevaluated, instead of saying, well, this I quit, I'm not doing it, is to find something positive. When I'm having my discussion with them, I always start with a positive comment and finish. Even if there's kind of some not good pleasantries in the middle about things that I've seen, I always start and end. And one of the other things that through the reading tells us is we should not say to our leaders, how do you think it went? Because as an evaluator, it doesn't matter whether our leader thinks it went good or bad as it relates to whether or not they met the standards. And the answer to that question is no. So when you look at sort of, organizations that do tons of evaluations, they all say, do not ask the person you're evaluating how they felt it went. You can ask them at the end if they feel they have any questions or anything like that. Because if I say to you, how do you think it went? What do you think most new leaders and even certifying leaders are going to do right away?
They're gonna say, I think it went pretty good, because they want that pass.
You want to? They don't say that.
Really?
They
Actually,
don't.
tell
All of
themselves
that.
They
Every time?
slaughter themselves.
Oh, well, I
Every
wouldn't, just so you know. I'd be like, I was great.
right? Because you've done CBT. They slaughter themselves.
I've done
Well,
that.
I know I should have done this. Oh, I know you're going to talk about this, and
That's okay.
they'll slaughter themselves. They'll dig a grave for themselves. So let's not put them in that situation.
So if you get to that point where there's a few things that you're quite concerned about, they're not meeting the standards, say
Yeah.
2 points
Yeah.
out of, I remember we looked through the sheet,
Yeah.
but I can't remember them all. Okay. And instead of saying you failed, say you passed all these things, these are 2 areas, can you because you can avoid that, you
Yep.
failed.
Yep. And so
Comment.
sometimes I have
Right.
given, here's the truth. If I feel that they're close to a pass, but let's say there was maybe just one kind of catastrophic thing, before I actually send the evaluation in, I'll say to them, like, when do you teach next?
I'll pop in.
And I'll just pop in and take a look. Or I'll even come back and, you know, give me a chance to see it again. If I find, only once, I'll be honest, only once, and I've been evaluating for 17 years, have I seen something so disastrous that I wanted to poke my eyes out. I just thought, how did you even get here? I would say 3 or 4 times I've said to them, I'm not sure I can give you a pass tonight, but if I can see this maybe tomorrow or when you teach, and just pop in and you know, see your cool down. Let's say, for example, they, you know, destroy their cool down. Sometimes I'll do that before I actually hand in the evaluation. And then, given that kind of second chance, it still doesn't meet the standards, then I'm gonna actually submit a fail.
Yeah.
I have submitted.
That's fair.
I have
That's
submitted a couple fails that are just. I can remember the one. It was just, I have never seen anything like it. Now,
But I mean, that's one time in 17 years, but obviously it's stats.
Yeah, it's
a
definitely,
vivid
and I have
memory.
seen some crazy things.
Yeah.
But be ready that any time, even if you pass them on the evaluation, like perhaps give them a lower mark or a fail on one of the components, they're going to argue with you. And as an evaluator, you've evaluated. It's not your job to convince them. It's your expert opinion based on the standards, whether they pass or fail. And people will, first they'll argue with you, and then they'll call Stephanie or Tina, and they'll blame you for the fact they failed. So we also have to have a little bit of a tough skin, because it is hard. Like, I want people to be successful, and ultimately, most of us want people to like us. So if I evaluate you, I don't want you walking out of the evaluation going, geez, Christine is a bitch, and I'm never going to her classes, and nobody should ever get evaluated. I don't want people thinking that of me either. So we're all human.
Yeah.
But we have to be objective in that evaluation process. And when I sit them down at the beginning and talk about roles, I kind of sometimes joke about it, but I say, you know, I'm a friendly person, but tonight I'm not here as your friend. This is my job, and it's not based on a personal attack or any, you know, however you want to word it. This is my job. Because it can, like, have you probably evaluated people you know and peers? Yeah,
For sure, yeah.
Actually, one of my clients is
And
doing
it-
her practical.
And it's interesting because think about how long we've all been in this industry and how we would feel if all of a sudden tomorrow we're going to all evaluate you. So we think we're all awesome instructors and we do everything perfect. But if someone outside was now looking at our classes, how would they perceive what we're doing? So it is a challenge because we want to be liked, we want to be kind to people, we want people to be successful. But we have a job to do on whether or not they meet the standards.
So is there a list of, I mean, I know what my standards are.
Yeah.
I don't know what the MFC standards
Yeah.
are, where you, obviously you want them to introduce the class.
Yes,
And you give
yeah.
them their name, and you
Yeah.
want to make sure that they give modifications, like, I mean,
Yeah.
so there is a list.
Yep, yep, there's an actual
It's
checklist
in here.
Okay.
in your package
Okay,
that will go through. But you're right, like when you own a facility or you're a manager of a facility, like for example, I'll give you a perfect example. You only need the choreography component to teach a choreography-based class. That's what the MFC requires you. All of my land instructors have to have resistance training. Even if you don't teach resistance training, I don't hire you if you don't have resistance training because I feel, personally, I feel like resistance training gives you a little bit more background on movement mechanics and anatomy and modifications. So even though you might strictly be teaching a step class with a stretch at the end with absolutely no MS and E, I still require everyone. So your employer or your facility might have higher standards on how they're hiring an instructor, but for the evaluation process, it's whether or not they're meeting the MFC. Because, yeah, because when I hire someone too, even if they have an MSc, I still want to see them teach a class. I want to see them teach a class. So are they meeting our facility standards? Any other feedback, comments? Is that helpful, or? Yeah, especially, I mean, because the two of you have been doing evaluations for a long time. So if you have any questions, feel free. We're going to take just like about a 10-minute break. The other group is coming in at